You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki. 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, when just be yourself feels impossible. Y'all, I have been in crunch time. If you listened last week, you heard me trying to make some sense of it. And as these things often do, learning about yourself and uncovering who you are happens in layers. So this week's episode offers yet another deeper layer of me coming to a fresh understanding of my recent identity transition process, if I could call it that. Today's episode is what happens when the identity you thought was you was not actually who you truly are. It's about realizing how much of my life I had built on pressure, achieving, going for perfection, and the flip side of that, shame and survival. Alas, I am finally saying thank you and お疲れ様でした. An honorable goodbye to all of these things that have run me. But my dear friends, in my softness, I am discovering that I quite literally have no idea who I am without these engines powering my life. Letting go of an old identity can feel like letting go of yourself. Lately, I've been noticing something strange in myself, and it's avoidance. Not complete denial or fully checking out, but a subtle kind of internal distancing. And in sitting with that, a massive Kizuki landed. In hindsight, I can say that I began to touch on it a little in the last episode, but it's been sinking in more deeply. And today I want to take it apart because I realized I had gotten into the habit of projecting a chunk of my energy into the future. It's like I was always placing some 20% of myself into some future version of my life. And I always thought that that projection was about hope, possibility, about my becoming. Until a dear friend recently helped me realize, no, Mae, this isn't actually about the hope of your better future. This is more about you running from your current life. Ouch. Because it wasn't like I hated my life. It's not like I was rejecting my life. But it was just so true that my throwing out 20% into the future in the name of hope was a significant part of me that always remained in the future. In other words, slightly elsewhere and not here and now. Oof. When that Kizuki landed, it felt like an awakening jolt. What a massive energy leak in my system to never quite fully be here and now. And the painful thing was, the achy thing was that I had been doing this to myself, just diminishing myself from being fully here. It's like I had been denying parts of myself and blaming my circumstances for why I couldn't fully be who I was. And to be fair, there are external circumstances that pose challenges for me and for all of us, right? But truth be told, it became less about the circumstances and challenges themselves and more about how I had internalized them, what I made it mean to myself. Because there may be real cultural pressures in my life here in Japan, real societal expectations that I don't fit into. But the deeper question became, how have I internalized those pressures and made them true for myself? And as I sat with that, I saw for the first time with startling clarity that I had been sandwiched between two opposing forces. One voice that says, you should be more, achieve more, you should have more, be more, you should be further along, you should be exceptional. And then another voice at other times that says, shh, you're too much. Don't be too much to handle. Don't stand out too much. Your intensity might be too much for everyone. Oh, and don't be too visible. Well, no wonder I was never going to feel like I was getting it right. If I'm always trapped between I should be more and I am too much, how could I ever feel safe just being me? And that's a crippling feeling, right? Because then it feels like there's no safe direction. If I expand, I'm too much. If I stay as I am, I'm not enough. If I shine, I'm exposed. If I hide, I'm betraying myself. It's no wonder that I would feel all of this pressure and I would freeze because every direction feels wrong. Now, at this point in my realization, I chuckle to myself because the irony is that my entire Japanese business slogan is "You just do you." A phrase that I heard in my early 20s that someone said to me to my face that really resonated with me. It stuck with me. And I wanted to bring that element to Japan, to all of us, but particularly to a culture and a nation where individual self-expression tends to be suppressed. And yet I realized when I dive into that, how impossible it can feel to just do you when you're sensitized to all of these pressures from both above and below. Right. It's so true that sometimes we teach what we are learning most deeply ourselves. And sometimes we share what we most need to hear. That's me. Maybe "you just do you" was never just a slogan. Maybe it was the deepest invitation of my life. Because here's the reality of it. Once you become conscious of the pattern, once the kizuki arrives, then you can make a new choice. You have agency. But in this case, letting go of the fear of being too much and simultaneously also letting go of the pressure to constantly achieve, it felt like letting go of myself entirely, to be honest. I mean, I guess it's not all of myself exactly, but pretty close to all of who I thought I was, or how I'd known myself to be thus far. Because the Mae whose operating system was to pressure yourself to achieve, to leave no room for error, avoid criticism, don't be sloppy, never be caught underprepared, and don't be ordinary, but also never be too much, and never ever not be enough. Like letting go of all of that, it's not just letting go of a habit. It's letting go of a whole identity of who I thought I was. And when something, it's like an entire set of things together has been your identity, your survival mechanism for 30 years, releasing that, it doesn't feel freeing at first. It feels like free fall. Because for someone who has used self-pressure as a mechanism since childhood, that mode of relating to myself, of pressuring myself to perform or to achieve, that was how I felt safe in the world. Oddly enough, it's true. And then came the terrifying question, who am I without pressure? Who am I if I'm not pushing myself to become someone? Who am I if I'm not trying to perfect myself? If I'm not proving myself or even improving myself or correcting myself or preparing myself to be better? Who am I? And the whole thing just felt completely unfamiliar, the entirety of it. So as I sit with all of that, I began to notice an underlying false assumption that if I stop pressuring myself in the way that I was used to, I would collapse. That if I stop pushing myself to become someone, that I might lose my edge. Oh, but this is where self-inquiry and the observer role that meditation teaches, this is where awareness comes in for me, because it allows me to question my own thoughts. And I just ask myself, is that true? If I stop pressuring myself, will I really collapse? And if I stop pushing myself to become someone or to become some next version of me, will I really lose my edge? Is my edge that losable? You know? Because deep down, I knew. And I know in my heart that pressure was never the true source of everything that I've achieved thus far. And so I started to ask myself another question. If it wasn't really the pressure and the ways of pressure that helped me to become who I am today, what actually brought me this far? Is it my depth of character that's been built through life experience? Is it a collection of my choices that I try to choose in dignity and integrity? Or perhaps my devotion because I want to live from my heart? Or maybe clarity because I value clarity? And what about my love? And do any of these things require pressure to be squeezed out of me? We all know the answer to that question is no. And I realized I had been trying to free myself by choosing between two cages, becoming more or staying less. But I think I'm beginning to see that freedom, true freedom, is neither. It doesn't mean that you would be free, that I would be free from both of these voices. The voice that wants to push me and pressure me to be more, or the voice that warns me to stay not too much. Let the voices be there, because if they're there, they're already there. There's no sense in denying them or trying to turn them off or invalidating them, because even the voices are parts and aspects of me. But freedom, perhaps, is no longer buying into either voice as truth. So that's where I am right now. Not fully free, not fully reborn, not suddenly relaxed and home free, but awake to the old, seemingly all-encompassing pattern. All of those pressures that I thought was me, that I thought made up all of me. That wasn't so. So for me today, the beginning of freedom is simply this. Yes, I can notice the pressure without obeying it. Yes, I can notice the shame and even let it be there without listening to it. Yes, I have the space to notice the fear of being too much without shrinking for it. And yes, I can also notice the desire to fit in without abandoning myself for it. So perhaps You Just Do You begins right there in the terrifying, tender space where I no longer know who I am without all of the ways that I've pressured myself. Because if I'm really real with you, although all of this feels like a free fall, I'm actually beginning to see I don't think I'm losing myself. I think I'm losing the pressure system I mistook for myself. Thank you for listening. If you missed the recent Kizuki Journaling online session, the on-demand replay is now available at maey.live under On Demand. And if you'd like to be the first to know when the next live session opens, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter at the bottom of maey.live or kizukijournaling.com.